The HOA president stood at my gate with 6 police cruisers behind her, demanding we shut down Grandpa's 90th birthday. She had no idea the sheriff was cutting the birthday cake in my backyard, or that her own dirty secrets were about to explode. That Saturday morning had started perfectly. The September sun painted golden streaks across Blackwood Ranch as I adjusted the welcome banner for the 20th time. My hands trembled slightly. Not from the cool morning breeze, but from the weight of hosting our family's legendary annual gathering for the first time since my parents passed. 300 acres of Texas hill country stretched before me, dotted with century-old oak trees that had witnessed every Blackwood celebration since 1952. Today would honor that legacy while celebrating Grandpa Atticus reaching his 9th decade on this earth. Zephyr, the jazz quartet just arrived, called out my cousin Indigo from the main pavilion. She balanced her laptop on one hip while directing the musicians with her free hand. They're asking about the acoustic setup near the pond. I jogged over, my boots crunching on the gravel path Dad had laid himself 15 years ago. The morning air carried hints of mesquite smoke from the barbecue pits we'd started at dawn. Everything had to be perfect, not just because Grandpa deserved it, but because I needed to prove I could carry on what my parents had built. Dad always said the ranch had friends in high places, though I never fully understood what he meant until today's events would unfold. The parking area already buzzed with activity as early guests arrived. I'd marked off special spots near the house, including one labeled simply VIP DM in crisp white paint. My assistant Sage had questioned the mysterious reservation, but I'd only smiled and said it was for an old family friend. Some traditions were worth preserving, even if their full meaning remained unclear. By 10 a.m., Blackwood Ranch transformed into something magical. Food trucks lined the eastern pasture, their colorful awnings creating a festival atmosphere. The Tejano Fusion truck's speaker competed playfully with the jazz quartet's smooth melodies. Children's laughter echoed from the carnival game area where we'd set up ring toss, a dunking booth, and even a mechanical bull programmed to its gentlest setting. The party rental company had outdone themselves with elegant white tents that provided shade without blocking the view of our spring-fed pond. I was adjusting the microphone for Grandpa's speech when I overheard 2 elderly women near the dessert table. "Is Cordelia coming?" whispered one, her voice barely audible above the festivities. The other woman's face went pale as she quickly shushed her companion, glancing around nervously. "We don't speak that name here." "Miriam, you know better." The interaction struck me as odd, but before I could approach them, my attention was pulled elsewhere. "Zephyr Blackwood," Grandpa Atticus's voice boomed across the lawn as he arrived in his restored 1965 Mustang convertible, driven by his caregiver. At 90, he moved slower than in his ranching days, but his spirit remained unbreakable. His silver hair caught the sunlight as he climbed out, leaning on his hand-carved mesquite cane. "Boy, you've turned this place into something special. Your parents would be proud." The words hit deeper than he probably intended. I'd spent countless sleepless nights wondering if I was honoring their memory properly. This ranch wasn't just land and buildings, it was the heart of our family's story. Every fence post, every oak tree, every worn path held memories of generations who'd worked this soil and celebrated life's milestones here. As I helped Grandpa to his seat of honor, draped with a banner reading, 90 years young, more guests streamed through the gates. The Blackwood annual gathering had always been more than a family reunion. It was a community celebration that welcomed friends, neighbors, and even strangers who'd heard about our legendary hospitality. By noon, over 200 people filled the grounds, their voices creating a joyful symphony that would have made my mother smile. My friend Phoenix managed the sound system, queuing up Grandpa's favorite Bob Wills songs between the jazz sets. "Hey Zeph," he called out, adjusting his backwards baseball cap. "You might want to check out the lady in the white Escalade who just pulled up. She's taking photos of everyone's cars and writing stuff down." Through the crowd, I spotted the vehicle Phoenix mentioned. A pristine white Escalade with HOA president vanity plates sat at an odd angle, partially blocking the entrance. The woman emerging from it looked like she'd stepped out of a corporate boardroom rather than arrived at a ranch party. Her navy blazer remained buttoned despite the warming day, and her perfectly styled auburn hair didn't move despite the breeze. She held her phone high, methodically recording as she walked. Something in my gut tightened. We'd never had issues with neighbors before. The nearest property line was half a mile away, and the Blackwood family had maintained friendly relationships with everyone in the area for generations. But this woman moved with the determined stride of someone on a mission, and her expression suggested it wasn't a friendly one. I intercepted her halfway up the main path, extending my hand with genuine warmth. Welcome to Blackwood Ranch. I'm Sefer Blackwood. Are you here for Grandpa Atticus's birthday celebration? She ignored my outstretched hand. Instead, raising her phone to record my face directly. Cordelia Ashford, President of the Mesquite Valley Homeowners Association. I'm here regarding multiple violations of Bylaw 47. 3 subsection C, regarding gatherings exceeding 50 persons without proper HOA approval. Her voice carried the practiced authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. The absurdity of her claim nearly made me laugh. Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Blackwood Ranch isn't part of any HOA. We've been here since 1952. Long before the Mesquite Valley development even existed. Cordelia's lips pursed into a thin line as she pulled out a manila folder from her designer handbag. According to the expanded HOA charter filed 6 months ago, all properties within a 2-mile radius of the Mesquite Valley entrance are subject to our bylaws and regulations. Your grandfather may have signed away your rights without realizing it. Now I knew she was bluffing. Grandpa Atticus might be 90, but his mind remained sharp as a tack. He'd never sign anything without running it past our family lawyer first. Still, something about Cordelia's confidence unsettled me. She spoke with the conviction of someone who'd done this before, who knew exactly which buttons to push. Look, Mrs. Ashford, I appreciate your concern, but we're having a private family celebration on private property. You're welcome to join us. We have plenty of food, and I'm sure Grandpa would love to meet you. I gestured toward the buffet tables where guests loaded plates with brisket, corn on the cob, and all the fixings. Her face contorted as if I'd offered her poison. Join you? This illegal assembly needs to end now. Her voice rose to a near shriek, causing nearby conversations to halt. The noise levels alone are in violation of county ordinances. The smell of smoke from your barbecue pits constitutes air pollution. And I count at least 15 health code violations from those food trucks operating without proper permits. Behind her, I noticed several guests pulling out their phones, recognizing drama when they saw it. Indigo appeared at my elbow, her own phone already recording. Good. If this woman wanted to make a scene, we'd have evidence of who started it. Mrs. Ashford. I kept my voice level and professional, channeling the patience my mother had taught me. Everything here is legal and permitted. The food trucks have their licenses. We're well within noise ordinances for daytime gatherings. And again, we're not part of your HOA. She stepped closer, invading my personal space. The smell of expensive perfume mixed oddly with the barbecue smoke. Young man, I've shut down bigger operations than this little party. I have connections at every level of local government. One phone call, and I'll have the police here so fast your head will spin. Something flickered in her eyes when she mentioned the police. A momentary uncertainty that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Behind her, I caught sight of that elderly woman, Miriam. Watching our confrontation with unusual intensity, she clutched her purse tightly, knuckles white, as if restraining herself from intervention. Then make your call, I said simply. We have nothing to hide? Cordelia's smile turned predatory as she dialed 911 with theatrical precision. Yes. This is Cordelia Ashford, HOA President. I need immediate police response to Blackwood Ranch on Old Canyon Road. Mass disturbance. Over 200 individuals. Possible weapons. And I feel threatened. She stared directly at me as she added that last fabrication. The lie about weapons made my blood boil. The most dangerous thing at this party was Grandpa's cane, and that was only because he used it to steal extra cookies when he thought no one was looking. But I held my tongue, knowing that arguing would only escalate things. As Cordelia continued her dramatic performance for the emergency operator, a guest I didn't recognize slipped away from the crowd, pulling out his own phone. He wore a simple polo shirt and jeans, but something about his bearing suggested authority. He spoke quietly into his phone while keeping his eyes on Cordelia, then disappeared behind the main house. They're sending units immediately, Cordelia announced with satisfaction, ending her call. I suggest you start sending these people home unless you want them all arrested for trespassing. On my own property? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. On HOA, regulated property, she corrected, waving her folder again. I have documentation here that supersedes any ancient property claims your family might have. The world is changing. Mr. Blackwood, it's time you accepted that. The next 20 minutes crawled by with excruciating tension. Cordelia positioned herself at the entrance like a self-appointed sentinel, recording every guest and taking copious notes. Despite her presence, the party continued. The jazz quartet played a particularly upbeat version of When the Saints Go Marching In, which felt both defiant and appropriate. Grandpa Atticus, observing the situation from his chair, caught my eye and winked. "Don't let her ruffle your feathers, boy," he called out. "I've dealt with worse buzzards than her." His confidence helped steady my nerves, reminding me that Blackwoods didn't back down from bullies. The sound of sirens started as a distant wail, growing louder with each passing second. My heart rate spiked despite my certainty we'd done nothing wrong. There's something primal about approaching sirens that triggers fight-or-flight instincts, even in the innocent. But it wasn't just 1 or 2 units that appeared at our gate. 6 police cruisers rolled up in formation, lights blazing but sirens cutting off as they parked. The sheer number seemed excessive for a noise complaint, and I wondered if Cordelia's lies about weapons had triggered a more serious response. Officers emerged from their vehicles with practiced precision, hands resting on their equipment belts, but not drawing weapons. I recognized Officer Reeves from the local precinct, a young man who'd helped when we'd had some cattle escape onto the road last spring. He looked distinctly uncomfortable as he approached, glancing between Cordelia and the party behind me. "Mr. Blackwood." Officer Reeves nodded politely. "We received a call about a disturbance and potential weapons." Before I could respond, Cordelia charged forward like an avenging angel. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This illegal gathering has been going on for hours despite my lawful orders to disperse. I want the homeowner arrested first for intimidation and threatening behavior." Officer Reeves shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we need to assess the situation first." "Mr. Blackwood, how many people are here?" "About 200. "Officer, it's my grandfather's 90th birthday party. Family and friends. All invited guests on private property." I kept my voice calm, though Cordelia's smugness made it difficult. The lead officer, whose nameplate read Sergeant Kowalski, surveyed the scene with experienced eyes. His gaze lingered on the carnival games, the elderly guests in lawn chairs, children chasing each other with balloon animals. This clearly wasn't the dangerous gathering Cordelia had described. "Are there any weapons on the premises?" Sergeant Kowalski asked. "Following protocol, unless you count the piñata stick." "No, sir," I replied, which earned a quickly suppressed smile from Officer Reeves. Cordelia's face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. They're in violation of HOA bylaws. I demand you shut this down immediately." She waved her folder so vigorously that papers threatened to escape. Sergeant Kowalski turned to her with professional patience. "Ma'am, HOA violations are civil matters, not criminal. We can't arrest people for having a birthday party on private property." The officers continued their assessment, but something odd was happening. They kept glancing toward the back of the property, where the main festivities were centered, not with suspicion, but almost like they were looking for someone. Officer Reeves actually checked his watch twice in the span of a minute. Finally, the younger officer cleared his throat. "Sergeant, is Sheriff Morrison here yet?" The question hung in the air like a lightning bolt. Cordelia's eyes widened, darting between the officers. "Sheriff Morrison? Why would the sheriff be at this gathering?" The pieces clicked together in my mind like tumblers in a lock. The reserved parking spot marked D.M. Danny Morrison, the old family friend Dad had always mentioned. The reason Grandpa had winked at me with such confidence, as if summoned by the mention of his name. Sheriff Danny Morrison emerged from behind the main house, still wearing the paper party hat someone had placed on his head. In his hands, he carried a large sheet cake decorated with Happy 90th Atticus in blue frosting. His uniform shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a festive bow tie underneath. "Gentlemen," Sheriff Morrison nodded to his officers, his voice carrying natural authority despite the ridiculous party hat. "I see you've met Mrs. Ashford. I was just about to cut the birthday cake. Kowalski. Reeves. You boys want a slice? It's chocolate with buttercream frosting." The transformation in Cordelia's face was worth recording for posterity. The color drained so quickly I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed without sound, reminding me of a fish pulled from water. The folder in her hands trembled, papers sliding out unnoticed to scatter at her feet. "Sheriff Morrison," she finally managed to squeak out. I wasn't aware that I've been best friends with Atticus Blackwood for 60 years, Sheriff Morrison finished helpfully. He set the cake down on a nearby table and removed his party hat, though his expression remained pleasant, or that I attended his son's wedding on this very property, or that I helped teach young Zephyr here how to ride his first horse. Each revelation hit Cordelia like a physical blow. Her carefully constructed authority crumbled with every word. The officers relaxed visibly, with Officer Reeves actually grinning now. The crisis that Cordelia had manufactured was dissolving faster than sugar in rain. But Sheriff Morrison wasn't finished. His expression shifted from friendly to professionally serious. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm curious about something. You called 911 and reported weapons at this gathering. That's a serious allegation. Making false reports to emergency services is a crime." I felt threatened, Cordelia stammered, desperately trying to regain control. The way he looked at me. The aggressive posture. "The way I offered you barbecue?" I interjected. Unable to resist, Sheriff Morrison held up a hand for silence. "We'll review the recordings. I understand multiple guests were filming the interaction." He glanced meaningfully at Indigo, who nodded with her phone still in hand. Cordelia's desperation manifested in a burst of indignation. "This is corruption. You're all in on it together. The good old boys network protecting each other while law-abiding citizens like me try to maintain order and property values." "Property values?" Grandpa Atticus's voice carried across the yard as he slowly made his way over. Leaning on his cane, "Young lady, this ranch has been in our family for 3 generations. We've weathered droughts, floods, and economic downturns. The only threat to property values I see is people like you trying to divide neighbors with made-up rules and false authority." The crowd had grown during the confrontation, with guests forming a loose circle around us. Their phones captured every moment as Cordelia realized she'd lost control of the situation. But instead of backing down gracefully, she doubled down on her attack. "I don't care if the whole police department is here," she shrieked, spittle flying from her lips. "I have connections at the state level. I've been documenting violations for weeks. Noise complaints, traffic issues, environmental violations. I have evidence." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling frantically through what appeared to be hundreds of photos and videos. In her haste, she didn't notice the notification that popped up on her screen. But I caught a glimpse. "Riverside HOA legal team, urgent, status update needed on." The notification disappeared as she swiped it away. But something about it nagged at me. Riverside HOA? That was 2 counties over. Why would she be getting legal updates from them? Sheriff Morrison noticed her phone activity with interest. "You've been surveilling this property for weeks? Without identifying yourself or serving notice? Mrs. Ashford. That borders on stalking." "It's not stalking when you're protecting community standards." Cordelia's voice reached a pitch that made dogs 2 properties over start barking. "Someone has to stand up to these people who think they're above the law." That phrase triggered something in the elderly woman. "Miriam." She stepped forward from the crowd, her weathered face set with determination. "Just like Riverside all over again," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Cordelia's head snapped toward Miriam so fast I heard her neck pop. The recognition in her eyes was immediate and terrified. You can't be here. You're supposed to be in bankruptcy court," Miriam finished. "Oh, I was. Thanks to you and your creative accounting at Riverside Estates." The plot thickened like good gravy. Sheriff Morrison's eyes sharpened with professional interest. "Mrs. Miriam Winters," the elderly woman supplied, "former resident of Riverside Estates, until our HOA president embezzled $500,000 and disappeared in the night. Funny how she looked exactly like Mrs. Ashford here. Except her name was Cornelia Ashby then." The accusation landed like a bomb. Guests gasped. Phones swung toward Miriam, and Cordelia's face went from pale to ghostly white. She took a step backward, nearly tripping over her own scattered papers. That's slander," Cordelia sputtered. "I'll sue you for defamation." "Sheriff, arrest this woman for making false accusations." But Sheriff Morrison was already on his radio. "Dispatch. Run a check on Cordelia Ashford, also known as Cornelia Ashby. Possible connection to the Riverside Estates embezzlement case from 2019. The amount of sweat suddenly beading on Cordelia's forehead despite the mild temperature told its own story. Her eyes darted around like a trapped animal seeking escape routes. The crowd had unconsciously tightened, blocking any easy exit. "This is a setup," Cordelia's voice cracked with desperation. "You're all in on it. This whole party was a trap." "Actually," said the man in the polo shirt who'd made the phone call earlier, stepping forward with a badge in hand, "you're only half right. I'm investigator Joaquin Vega with the state attorney's office. We've been tracking Cornelia Ashby for 3 years. When Sheriff Morrison heard Mesquite Valley had a new HOA president matching her description, who was harassing longtime residents, he invited me to observe." The revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. I stood there stunned, realizing the VIP parking spot hadn't been for Sheriff Morrison at all. It had been for the state investigator, The old family friend had turned Grandpa's birthday into a sting operation, but the real credit, Investigator Vega continued, nodding toward Miriam, goes to Mrs. Winters here. She recognized you months ago but knew you'd run if confronted directly. So she waited, gathered evidence, and reached out to us. We've been building a case, waiting for you to make a mistake. Calling in a false police report? That's the probable cause we needed. Cordelia's transformation from HOA tyrant to cornered criminal was complete. Her designer handbag fell from nerveless fingers, spilling its contents across the ground. Among the scattered items, I spotted multiple driver's licenses with different names but the same face. You can't prove anything, she whispered. But the fight had left her voice. Actually, Miriam said, pulling out her own phone, I've been recording every HOA meeting for the past 6 months. Your voice patterns, your mannerisms, even that specific way you mispronounce ordinance as ordinance. My grandson's a sound engineer. He confirmed it's the same person who gave all those HOA speeches at Riverside. The net was closing, and Cordelia knew it. Her shoulders slumped in defeat, aging her 10 years in 10 seconds. The woman who'd strutted onto my property demanding submission now looked small and pathetic. Sheriff Morrison stepped forward with practiced authority, his earlier jovial demeanor replaced by professional steel. Cordelia Ashford, or Cornelia Ashby, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and filing a false police report. Kowalski, Reeves, please assist. The two officers moved smoothly into position, but Cordelia suddenly erupted into motion. With surprising agility for someone in designer heels, she spun away from Officer Reeves and bolted toward her Escalade. Her flight lasted exactly 3 seconds before her heel caught in the gravel, sending her sprawling face first into the dirt path. The crowd collectively winced at the impact. My nose, she wailed from the ground, blood seeping between her fingers. Police brutality. I want my lawyer. Ma'am? You tripped, Sergeant Kowalski said dryly as he helped her up, producing handcuffs with efficient movements. Though resisting arrest is another charge we'll be adding to your collection. As they secured Cordelia's hands behind her back, Investigator Vega addressed the captivated crowd. Folks, I apologize for the disruption to Mr. Blackwood's birthday celebration. What you've witnessed today is the culmination of a 3-year investigation into one of the most prolific HOA fraud schemes in Texas history. He pulled out a tablet, swiping through official documents. Cornelia Ashby established herself as HOA president at Riverside Estates in 2018. Within 6 months, she'd changed billing procedures, created fake vendor companies, and systematically drained the community's reserves. $500,000 vanished before residents realized what was happening. Miriam stepped forward again, her voice steady but tinged with old pain. She convinced us we needed emergency repairs to the community center, special assessments of $5,000 per household. My husband and I emptied our savings, thinking we were protecting our property values. 3 months later, the money was gone, and so was she. The crowd's mood shifted from entertainment to anger as the scope of Cordelia's crimes became clear. These weren't victimless white-collar infractions. She'd destroyed retirements, shattered trust, and left entire communities in financial ruin. But here's where it gets interesting. Investigator Vega continued, glancing at Sheriff Morrison. We tracked similar schemes in 4 other communities across Texas. Different names, same methods. Helena Ashwood in Brazos Bend, Cynthia Ashland in Copper Creek. Always variations of the same identity, always targeting established communities with elderly residents. Cordelia, blood still trickling from her nose, laughed bitterly. You think you've won? I've got offshore accounts you'll never find. Shell companies layered so deep your little investigation will run out of funding before you scratch the surface. Actually, a new voice chimed in from the crowd. That's where you're wrong. Indigo pushed through the guests, laptop balanced on her arm. My tech-savvy cousin had been suspiciously quiet during the confrontation, and now I understood why. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she connected to the party's speaker system. While everyone was watching the drama unfold, Indigo announced with a satisfied smile, I was doing what I do best. Digital forensics. She turned the laptop screen toward Cordelia. Recognize this bank account in the Caymans? How about this one in Switzerland? Cordelia's face went from pale to green. How did you? That's illegal. Hacking is a federal crime. I didn't hack anything. Indigo replied smoothly. You logged into your accounts on your phone while you were documenting violations on our property. Our guest Wi-Fi terms of service, which you agreed to when you connected, allow monitoring for security purposes. You really should read those agreements. Sheriff Morrison couldn't quite hide his grin. Miss Blackwood, please share that information with Investigator Vega through proper channels? Of course. As they loaded Cordelia into the patrol car, she twisted around for one last venomous declaration. You ruined everything. This was supposed to be my biggest score. Do you have any idea how much this ranch is worth? Prime development land? And you're wasting it on birthday parties. The revelation hung in the air like smoke from the barbecue pits. Suddenly, her targeting of Blackwood Ranch made perfect sense. This wasn't about noise complaints or HOA regulations. It was about forcing us to sell through harassment and legal pressure. Investigator Vega nodded knowingly. Let me guess. Create enough violations. Levy enough fines. Make life miserable enough. And the family sells to escape the harassment. Then your anonymous development partners swoop in to buy the land at below market rates. 300 acres in this location? Cordelia snarled from the back seat. It's worth $50 million to the right developers. You backwards hicks are sitting on a gold mine and too stupid to realize it. Grandpa Atticus stepped forward, his cane striking the ground with each deliberate step. Despite his age, he radiated the authority of a man who'd built something worth protecting. Young lady, you're right about one thing. This land is valuable, but not everything valuable should be sold to the highest bidder. He gestured across the property with his free hand. My father bought this land with sweat and determination. My son expanded it with love and vision. My grandson maintains it with honor and dedication. You see dollars. We see generations of memories, traditions, and community. That's something your spreadsheets will never calculate. The crowd erupted in applause. And even some of the officers joined in. Cordelia slumped in the patrol car, finally understanding she'd attacked something money couldn't buy. As the police vehicles pulled away, the party atmosphere gradually returned. Though conversations buzzed with excitement about the dramatic events, Sheriff Morrison shook his head, accepting the piece of birthday cake someone offered him. In 60 years of friendship with Atticus, this ranks as one of the more interesting birthday parties. He turned to me with a paternal smile. Your dad would have handled it the same way. Tefir, let them dig their own graves while keeping your hands clean. The mention of my father brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Throughout the confrontation, I'd felt his presence, his guidance in how to handle Cordelia's aggression with dignity. The ranch wasn't just property. It was the physical manifestation of our family's values. Sheriff, I said, curiosity getting the better of me. How long have you known about Cordelia's true identity? He chuckled. Taking a bite of cake? About 4 months. When she started filing complaints about established families in Mesquite Valley, her pattern matched our BOLO alerts, but we needed solid evidence and probable cause. When Miriam contacted us with her suspicions, we knew it was only a matter of time before Cordelia overplayed her hand. So you used Grandpa's birthday as bait? More like an opportunity. Sheriff Morrison corrected. I knew someone like her couldn't resist trying to shut down something this joyful. Jealousy and greed make people predictable. Plus, Atticus thought it would be entertaining. From across the yard, Grandpa raised his beer in salute, that mischievous twinkle in his eye, confirming his complicity in the sting. The old rancher had played his part perfectly, letting Cordelia think she was dealing with vulnerable elderly folks while helping orchestrate her downfall. Investigator Vega approached with a business card. Mr. Blackwood, we'll need formal statements from you and your guests who witnessed the confrontation, but that can wait until Monday. Please, enjoy the rest of your grandfather's birthday. As he walked away, Miriam touched my arm gently. Thank you, she said simply. When I recognized her at that first HOA meeting, I wanted to scream, but I knew she'd run again, and more people would get hurt. Your family's party gave us the chance to stop her properly. You're the real hero here? I replied. It took incredible courage to face her again after what she did to you. Miriam's weathered face crinkled into a smile. My husband passed last year, still bitter about losing our savings. Getting justice for him, for all of us, helped heal something I thought would stay broken forever. The party resumed with renewed energy. As if Cordelia's negative presence had been a storm cloud now lifted, the jazz quartet struck up a celebratory tune, and even some of the officers who'd remained for statements found themselves tapping their feet. Phoenix cranked up the sound system, and soon the dance floor near the pond filled with couples of all ages. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I found myself standing where Cordelia had made her dramatic entrance. The scattered papers from her folder still littered the ground. Curious, I gathered them up, scanning the contents. What I found made my blood run cold all over again. Detailed surveillance notes going back months. Photos of every family member, including some taken with telephoto lenses, financial estimates of the ranch's value, contact information for multiple developers. And most disturbing, a draft press release announcing the voluntary sale of Blackwood Ranch to make way for a new shopping complex. She really thought she could force us out, Indigo said, reading over my shoulder. Look at this. She'd already promised the land to developers. Took deposits from them. That's wire fraud on top of everything else. I shook my head in amazement. How did she think she'd get away with it? Because she had before. Indigo replied grimly. Multiple times? Apparently. Each success made her bolder. More reckless. Classic escalation pattern. She probably saw our ranch as her retirement score. The party continued past sunset, with string lights creating a magical ambiance across the property. Grandpa Atticus gave his speech, thanking everyone for coming and sharing stories that had the crowd alternating between laughter and tears. He ended with a toast to family, friends, and the land that brought us together, to those who tried to break us. He raised his glass, eyes twinkling. You only made us stronger. And to those who stand with us, you make us whole. As guests began departing, each one stopped to shake my hand or offer a hug. The story of Cordelia's attempted takeover and dramatic arrest had already begun spreading through social media. Indigo showed me posts with titles like HOA Karen messes with wrong family and birthday party sting operation of the century. By the time the last guest left near midnight, exhaustion hit me like a physical weight. I collapsed into one of the chairs, surveying the remnants of what had become a legendary celebration. Paper plates and cups filled recycling bins. The dance floor bore scuff marks from enthusiastic boots, and someone's forgotten sweater hung on a fence post. Hell of a day, Uncle Jerome said, settling beside me with 2 beers. He'd driven in from Austin for the party, and his lawyer instincts had been fascinated by the legal drama. You handled that woman with more grace than I would have managed. I kept thinking about what Dad would do. I admitted, accepting the beer gratefully. He always said the ranch would face challenges, but he never mentioned they'd come in the form of a HOA president with multiple personalities and fraud convictions. Jerome laughed, the sound echoing across the now quiet property. Your father faced his share of schemes? Remember that oil company that tried to claim mineral rights in '08? Or the casino developers in '15? This land attracts opportunists, like honey attracts bears. How do we stop it from happening again? You don't stop it, Jerome said thoughtfully. You prepare for it? Document everything. Know your rights. Build strong community relationships. What saved you today wasn't just luck. It was 60 years of your family being good neighbors. Good citizens. Good people. When push came to shove, folks stood with you. His words carried wisdom I needed to hear. The ranch wasn't just protected by property lines and legal documents, but by the network of relationships my family had cultivated over generations. Cordelia had attacked an individual property, not realizing she was taking on an entire community's heritage. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings. Cordelia, whose real name turned out to be Catherine Ashbridge, faced federal charges that would likely result in decades of prison time. The investigation revealed 12 different communities she'd defrauded across 5 states, with total damages exceeding $3 million. The Mesquite Valley HOA, upon learning their president was a serial fraudster, voted to dissolve entirely. The rushed charter expansion that had supposedly included Blackwood Ranch proved to be completely fraudulent, filed without proper authority or community vote. Residents discovered they'd been paying fees into accounts controlled solely by Cordelia. With no actual community improvements made, Miriam became a regular visitor to the ranch, often bringing other Riverside survivors who needed to see justice served. We hosted them for a barbecue where they shared stories of recovery and resilience. From tragedy, a new community formed, bound by survival rather than geography. 1 year later, Blackwood Ranch hosted its annual gathering under very different circumstances. The story of Grandpa's 90th birthday had become legend, attracting media attention we'd never sought. Documentary crews had visited, journalists had written features, and social media had transformed our family gathering into a symbol of standing up to corruption. But on that day, we kept things simple. No film crews, no media. Just family and friends gathering to celebrate Grandpa Atticus's 91st birthday. The guest list had grown to include Miriam and her extended family, several of the officers who'd responded that fateful day, and even some former Mesquite Valley residents who'd become friends through the shared experience. Sheriff Morrison manned the grill, having officially retired but keeping his promise to cook for the next party. His apron read, "World's Best Sheriff." a gift from the grateful former HOA members. Investigator Vega stopped by with his family, his children immediately joining the games while he updated us on the case's progress. Catherine took a play deal. He informed us over brisket, 25 years federal time. With restitution to all victims, the recovered funds should help folks like Miriam recover most of their losses. The news brought relief tinged with sadness for the unnecessary pain one person's greed had caused, but the prevailing mood remained celebratory. We'd weathered the storm, protected our legacy, and emerged stronger. As the sun set on another successful gathering, I stood in the same spot where Cordelia had made her dramatic entrance. The view remained unchanged, rolling hills, ancient oaks, the pond reflecting the colored sky, but my understanding of what I protected had evolved. Indigo joined me. Her laptop closed for once. So, any other fake HOA presidents lurking in the shadows? Probably. I admitted with a laugh. Uncle Jerome says they're like wolves. Show weakness. And they circle. Show strength. And they find easier prey. Good thing we're ranchers then. She replied. We know how to handle predators. A new sign stood at the property entrance. Installed just that morning. In addition to the traditional Blackwood Ranch, established 1952, we'd added a second line, where community means family. It felt right, acknowledging that our strength came not from isolation, but from connection. Grandpa Atticus appeared with his cane, moving slowly but determinedly. Good party. Grandson. Not as exciting as last year, but probably for the best. Your grandmother would have scolded me for turning 90 with such drama. Think we'll make it through 92, without any wannabe crime bosses crashing the party? He grinned, the expression taking decades off his weathered face. Where's the fun in that? Besides, I've got my eye on that new fellow who bought the Jenkins place. Says he's starting a homeowners association for community improvement. Might need to invite Sheriff Morrison early next year. We laughed together. 3 generations of Blackwood standing on land that had seen prosperity and hardship, joy and conflict, but always endured. The ranch would face future challenges, developers, scammers, changing times, but we'd meet them the same way we always had, together. As the last light faded from the sky and the string lights took over illumination duties, I made a silent promise to my parents. The legacy they'd left wasn't just in acres or buildings, but in the community that rallied when threatened, the traditions that brought people together, and the values that no amount of money could purchase. Cordelia had been right about one thing. The land was worth millions to developers. But she'd been wrong about everything else. Some things weren't for sale at any price. Some legacies were worth more than money. And some communities, when tested, proved stronger than any HOA regulation or legal threat could ever be. The party continued late into the night, filled with music, laughter, and the comfortable warmth of people who'd faced adversity together and emerged victorious. In the distance, coyotes howled their ancient song, reminding us that this land had stories stretching back long before Blackwoods arrived and would continue long after we were gone. But for tonight, in this moment, surrounded by family and friends who'd proven their loyalty when it mattered most, everything was exactly as it should be. The ranch was safe, justice had been served, and Grandpa Atticus had made it to 91, with style. As for next year's party, well, we'd handle whatever came our way. After all, we were Blackwoods, we were Texans, and most importantly, we were a community that had learned the hard way that standing together was the only way to stand at all. The HOA president who'd threatened to destroy a legacy had instead strengthened it. In trying to tear us down, she'd built us up, and somewhere in federal prison, Catherine Ashbridge was learning what 300 acres of Texas stubbornness really meant when pushed too far. The Blackwood Ranch annual gathering would continue, as it had for 70 years, and would for 70 more, because some traditions were worth protecting, some communities worth defending, and some birthday parties worth turning into legend. The story might have ended there. But life on Blackwood Ranch had taught me that endings were really just new beginnings, wearing disguise. 3 months after Grandpa's 91st birthday, an unexpected letter arrived that would add one final chapter to our encounter with the fraudulent HOA president. The return address read, Federal Correctional Institution, Fort Worth, and the handwriting was unmistakably Cordelia's, or rather, Catherine's. My first instinct was to burn it unread, but curiosity won out. I opened it on the same porch where she'd first threatened our legacy. Mr. Blackwood, the letter began, you probably want nothing to do with me, and I don't blame you, but I need to tell someone the truth before it dies with me in this cell. Your ranch was never about money. It was about revenge. My blood chilled as I continued reading. According to Catherine, her father had been a developer in the 1970s who tried to buy Blackwood Ranch from my grandfather. When Grandpa Atticus refused, her father had attempted various schemes to force a sale, lawsuits, fake environmental violations, even trying to reroute water rights. Each attempt failed, eventually bankrupting him. I grew up hearing how the Blackwoods destroyed my family. She wrote, "When I discovered your ranch was still in the family, still thriving while my father died, bitter and broke, I couldn't let it stand. Every community I defrauded was practice for the main event, taking down Blackwood Ranch." The revelation reframed everything. Her sophisticated knowledge of property law, her network of developer contacts, even her escalating pattern of crimes, it all led to a decades-old vendetta I'd known nothing about. She'd spent years becoming the perfect weapon to destroy what her father couldn't buy. But the letter's final paragraph held the biggest surprise. "I'm writing because I need you to know that you won everything. Not just the legal case, but the war I didn't even know I was fighting." Sitting in that patrol car, listening to your grandfather speak about legacy and community, I realized my father wasted his life seeking revenge for a business deal, and I wasted mine, continuing his obsession. Don't let my mistake become yours. Some fights aren't worth winning. I sat with the letter for a long time, watching storm clouds build over the hills. Then I did something that would have made my parents proud. I drove to the federal prison during visiting hours. Catherine's shock when she saw me through the reinforced glass was worth the 3-hour drive. "Why?" was all she managed to say into the phone receiver. "Because hatred is a poison that destroys the vessel carrying it," I replied, quoting something my mother used to say. "Your father couldn't let go, and it consumed him. You couldn't let go, and look where it led. I'm here to end the cycle." We talked for the full hour aloud. Not as adversaries, but as two people trying to understand how generational anger could spiral so destructively. Catherine revealed more about her father's schemes, including documents hidden in safety deposit boxes that proved Grandpa Atticus had actually tried to help him find other land, even offering to co-sign loans. Her father's pride had refused what he saw as charity, choosing resentment over recovery. When our time ended, I made her a promise. "When you get out, if you need honest work, Blackwood Ranch will have a place for you. Not in management," I added with a wry smile, "but everyone deserves a second chance at redemption." She cried then, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her without calculation behind it. Through the glass, the woman who'd terrorized multiple communities looked small and lost, finally understanding what she'd thrown away, chasing someone else's ghost. The drive home took me past Mesquite Valley, where the failed HOA had left an unexpected legacy. Former members had formed a genuine community organization, focused on helping neighbors rather than controlling them. They'd elected Miriam as their coordinator, and she'd transformed the group into a support network for fraud victims across the state. I pulled over at their new community garden, where residents worked together growing vegetables for the local food bank. The contrast with Cordelia's vision of rigid rules and manufactured violations couldn't have been starker. From the ashes of her scheme, something beautiful had grown. 6 months later, at a ceremony at the state capitol, Governor Martinez presented awards to civilians who'd helped expose major fraud operations. Miriam, Indigo, and even Grandpa Atticus received recognition for their roles in stopping Catherine's multi-state crime spree. The media coverage helped other communities identify similar schemes in progress, preventing millions in additional losses. Sheriff Morrison, enjoying retirement but unable to resist one last moment in the spotlight, told reporters, "Sometimes the best police work happens at birthday parties. Community policing means being part of the community, not just patrolling it." The real satisfaction came from the letters we received from Catherine's victims, families who'd recovered their savings, communities rebuilding after her destruction, elderly residents who'd feared losing their homes now secure in their futures. Each story reminded us that standing up to her had protected far more than just our ranch. On a warm spring evening, I stood with Grandpa Atticus at our favorite overlook, watching the sun paint the landscape gold. At 91, he moved slower, but his mind remained sharp as the barbed wire defining our boundaries. "You know what the real irony is?" he mused, adjusting his worn Stetson. "That developer, Catherine's father, would have made a fortune if he'd just waited. Land prices increased tenfold since the 70s, but he wanted to force something that would have happened naturally with patience and respect. Think we'll ever be free of people trying to take what we've built?" Grandpa chuckled, the sound carrying decades of hard-won wisdom. "Son, as long as something has value, someone will try to steal it. But that's not the question to ask. The question is, will we have the strength and community to protect it? And after what I've seen, I'd say the answer is yes. As if to punctuate his words, a group of riders appeared on the horizon, Indigo leading her coding students on their weekly horseback riding lessons. Another tradition born from our dramatic year. The ranch had evolved from just preserving the past to actively building the future, welcoming new people while maintaining old values. That night, I added a new entry to the ranch journal my great-grandfather had started. Between weather reports and cattle counts, I wrote about forgiveness, community, and the dangerous weight of inherited hatred. Somewhere in federal prison, a woman was learning those same lessons far too late. But her story, intertwined with ours now, would serve as a reminder for future generations of Blackwoods. The ranch would face other challenges: drought, economy, changing times, but we'd weather them as we always had. Not alone, but surrounded by community. Not with hatred, but with hope, and always with the knowledge that what we protected was worth more than money could measure. The final entry that night was simple. Blackwood Ranch still stands. Tomorrow, we build.